Hi, and welcome back to Studio B Ventura for another Business Spotlight podcast, the show designed to help you grow your business. Studio B Ventura podcast will guide you in reaching your target audience by adding a personal touch to your communication and to help you increase your customer base while at the same time enhancing your brand. Today on the Business Spotlight podcast, I'd like to welcome Diana Verduzco, the Divine Designer. From a very young age, Diana has been fascinated with architecture and design. Her parents recall her making comments about interesting building facades or home exteriors from her car seat. When she reached college, Diana studied interior design and later earned a bachelor's degree in business. Determined to reach her goals as quickly as possible and with dreams of creating her own design firm, Diana launched herself into the industry as the Divine Designer in 2017. It's been 5 busy and successful years since then, and she's here in the studio and excited to talk with us about her journey. Welcome, Diana.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's get started with a little bit about what the day in the life of a designer is like.
Well, the day in the life of a designer can be very busy, surprisingly. As a designer, I sort of play the liaison between my client and the build team or contractor, architects, engineers, and various trades that we bring onto the project. So as that person and playing that role, I'm in constant communication with vendors and showrooms, and as well as the build team and any people that are working on the project that day. So the day usually starts very early, and there's often a lot of time spent at the job site itself. So I spend most of my day actually going job site to job site and stopping at the occasional showroom, looking for tile, looking for material samples, and working on the softwares on my computer to create 3D renderings, architectural drawings, construction documents, you name it.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that clients are oftentimes surprised at what goes into a redesign of a home?
Absolutely. I would say at the end of the project and even during, most of my clients say they have no idea how people do this without a designer because of just how intensive and detailed all of the documentation has to be. I mean, when you're submitting things to the city for permits, you have to be very detail-oriented, and the common person doesn't know how to create those documents. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, I can't imagine designing something blindly without seeing it first in 3D.
Okay. Now, you call yourself the Divine Designer. So how does that influence the work that you do?
I would say from the moment I launched my business in 2017, I felt this pull to be something greater than the typical interior designer you see in the industry. And I was looking for a way to sort of merge my 2 greatest passions in life, which is interior design and spirituality. And it sort of dawned on me that I could be both. And so I got certified in feng shui and became a worldwide feng shui practitioner. And I bring that into my projects in every step, in every phase of the project. So all decisions, design decisions, architectural decisions, construction decisions, all of that is rooted in spirituality with some intention of how it's going to benefit the homeowner or the client and how it will raise their vibration, raise the vibration of the home and of the property, of the planet. And that is why I've stepped into the role of the Divine Designer.
Do you find that similar to how people are surprised at what goes into the planning of a new design before it actually breaks ground, are people equally surprised about the spiritual aspect that can be incorporated into a home surroundings or your office environment and how that impacts you?
I would say yes and no. In some regards and with some people, they are very surprised at what goes into it. And, you know, it depends on how detailed we're getting with the spiritual stuff, like doing the numerology of your home address and seeing what that adds up to and what the vibration of the home is. A lot of people don't know that that's a thing. So I would say in that regard, they're very surprised when I introduce those types of teachings and practices. But I don't know, in this day and age, I feel like everybody is gaining so much more spiritual connection that a lot of the things I introduce are not super surprising to them. And maybe it's because my clients at this point are all so aligned and it's referral business, so they already kind of know what I do, that when I start getting into the woo-woo conversations, they roll with it and they get it. And if anything, they're like, oh yeah, I'm a Leo, so I know that my house needs to be like this. And they're already somewhat versed in the spiritual realm.
Okay. So it really has been a distinguishing factor for you in a positive way.
Definitely. I would say I'm one of the only people doing this type of work to this extent.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of your projects. What have been the challenges in this kind of a business?
Well, right now, the biggest challenge is probably the supply chain issue, and that's putting a lot of projects on pause for indefinite periods of time to get materials and furniture. But on a grander scheme, I would say the challenges can be just more patience. Like these structural projects can take years and years. So a lot of the clients I'm working with now, I've been working with for 2+ years. So I would say sometimes that can be challenging, not for me, but sometimes as a homeowner, you are just so eager to have your space ready to be livable, and there can be a gap of a waiting period.
Okay. All right. And also I wanted to talk about the most success that you've had, or a project that sticks out in your mind as being something that you're just extremely proud of.
Yeah, there's definitely, it's so hard to say. I'm so deeply connected to all of my projects and to all of my clients, for sure, that every project is truly very special to me. There is one I'm working on right now that's in Austin, Texas. It's a new construction. So it is just a massive project. It's been super fun. I'm choosing everything and deciding everything down to the hinges on the doors. So I'm very deeply involved. And when you're at that level of involvement, the connection that you build with the client and the home, the actual property itself, it goes very deep. So I would say that project is really important to me. It's very sentimental. I'm very connected to it, and I'm excited for the outcome.
And whatever happens if you and a client, for example, don't exactly see eye to eye on what the best design choice might be?
Well, I think with what I do and with what I preach, it's about what makes the client feel good. It's their home, not mine. So I am just there to be a guide for them and to help with the vision and help to see things that aren't there yet and help them understand what that's going to look like and share my experience. Well, in my experience, I've seen this before, and this is usually how it goes, so let me advise you on that. And I prefer to play that role versus the role of somebody coming in and just sort of laying out all of their opinions and their preferences and their style. I've never been a designer like that. I don't ever intend to be a designer like that. I would rather take their preferences, their style, and then guide them towards a cohesive outcome.
Okay. So we're talking about a few of your projects and those that you've really enjoyed the most. Can we take a look at some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have a couple photos here today I can show you. We've got a couple photos we can look through, actually. So this one here is a grand entry that I did in Woodland Hills. So this client was looking for something very glamorous, kind of eclectic, and we went with Philip Jeffries wallpaper, cowhide, Jonathan Adler pieces, really unique, really stunning and dramatic, with a giant pivot door, if I might add. And then this is a nursery that I did in Laguna Niguel for clients that were expecting a baby boy. So something very peaceful, tranquil. That is what goes in. A lot of my designs end up looking very serene, very neutral. I don't use that much color. I want your life to be colorful and your home to be serene and neutral. I think that that's very important, and that helps you to feel a lot more like soothed in the space, especially for a baby, which is interesting because actually a lot of people think the opposite, that nurseries should be very colorful. And bright. And like, I feel differently about that. So you'll notice in most of my home designs, a lot of the spaces that I design, there's so much symmetry. I feel that's very important to feel balanced. I'm also a Libra, so the scales are in my nature. And I just feel like less is more, simple, serene designs with an emphasis on symmetry. In my experience, this is what generally all clients walk into the space and go, wow, this feels so good, is when it's simple and symmetrical. Also, a lot of my spaces are light and bright, but of course it depends on the client's preference, like we talked about. So I guess in general, most of my clients hire me for what they've seen me do in my portfolio. And so they're very trusting and they like the light, bright, neutral aesthetic. So you'll often see images like this.
Does it happen frequently where a client will bring you in, say, for some help with redesigning a bathroom or a kitchen, and then it starts there and expands to other areas of the home?
Oh, yeah, 100%. We call that scope creep. So it's when you start with a specific scope, and then by the end of your working relationship, you've designed 3 of their homes. So that's usually how it goes, and I'm very grateful to be working with my clients on multiple projects for several years in a row because of that.
A lot of this that you're talking about, too, I can see how it would be really beneficial in the home so that you've got a really comfortable, relaxing, peaceful, and serene environment like you've described. How does that also translate into a commercial space, and have you done any of that sort of work?
That's a great question. I actually just this year started branching into the commercial space. It's nothing that I've ever thought I would be doing, because my whole mission of my company is to connect you with your home, and nothing is more personal than your home. So I always kind of kept commercial design at arm's length because I didn't think there was any type of like connection and emotion in that, but I was wrong. And several of my clients are entrepreneurs, and they have businesses, offices, studios that they spend arguably more time at than their home. And so I had this light bulb go off for me this year when a lot of my clients started asking me to design their commercial segments of their projects. And so now I'm working on corporate offices, I'm working on restaurants, and I'm working on yoga studios. So that's been really cool to expand in that way and to see that there is an emotional connection and there is a spiritual basis and personality to a commercial space. So it's been really fun and really challenging.
Now, you make a good point about the amount of time that people spend in those environments is often, nearly equivalent, or it feels like equivalent to the home.
If not more, yeah,
Right.
exactly. Depending if you're a workaholic like I am. Yeah.
Exactly. Like a lot of people
Yeah, like a lot of
these
people.
days, I would say. What would you say to someone who is interested in getting into the field of interior design, and where should they start? Yours was a little unconventional, I'd say. You just kind of went out there and threw yourself into it.
I did, yeah. So I'll sort of answer both of those points. Yeah, so when I got out of school, I realized, this is what I wanted to dedicate my life to. This is my purpose. I just started putting myself out there. I started Googling architectural firms in the area, immediately got a job as an assistant designer in Calabasas, started learning. And then shortly I transitioned to become an associate designer at Restoration Hardware. And I worked there for several years, and that was super fun. And then, like I said, I got my feng shui certification, and I'm doing all this simultaneously, but I reached sort of like a creative limit where I was at, and I realized that I wanted to start incorporating the spiritual aspect. And so I knew it was time for me to just branch off on my own, and biggest risk, biggest reward of my life. And so, yeah, I mean, I think everything was a stepping stone for me, and finally got to where I'm at today. For someone new, interested in becoming an interior designer, I would say first look at if you want to be a designer or if you want to be a decorator, because that is one of the biggest common misconceptions that I see, is that people say they want to be a designer, but they actually want to be a decorator, which is someone who helps you pick your furniture, your decor, accessories, wallpaper, paint colors, right?
Like home staging
Surface
sort of
level. Home staging is different, actually. Home stagers have warehouses of furniture, and they just come in and temporarily stage the home, and then some people purchase the pieces and some people don't. And to me, that's a little more disconnected from the spiritual aspect because it's so temporary. So staging is actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people think I'm a stager or other designers are stagers, and we are absolutely not. If anything, you could say interior stylist versus stager. But no, a decorator is more of like a surfaces, finishes, things like that, furniture. A designer, like we've talked about, is somebody like me who comes in when you're just in framing or a dirt lot and helps you realize the entire project A to Z. So that's layouts, kitchen design, cabinet elevations, things like that. That's a designer. So somebody coming to me and asking about the field of interior design, that's probably the first thing I would ask them, is to distinguish between those two roles. And if they decided they wanted to be a designer, I would say go work for a contractor or an architect, not necessarily another designer. Obviously, there's benefits to both, but I think the most valuable thing you can do as someone new to this field is learn all the contractor jargon and get yourself out on job sites and get your hands dirty and learn the lingo, because that was for me one of the hardest things, was sort of bridging the gap between being this designer and just showing up on job sites in my high heels, which is not something I even do at all anymore. I go in tennis shoes because it's really more of like that contractor role. So I think that would be the greatest thing you could do, is work for a contractor.
Okay, that's great advice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there anything else that you want people to know about Divine Design or the Divine Designer or the field, where you think it's headed in the future?
Okay, so look, in this world that we're living in right now, there's a need for something deeper. There's this craving, I think, across the board for this connection. And recently, more than ever, a lot of us have mostly been spending our time at home, right? Not so much anymore, but past couple years. And so I think that a lot of people are waking up to that soul space connection, and why your home needs to be your sanctuary, and why it needs to be tailored and customized to you. So I think right now on the planet, there is that yearning for a beautiful surrounding, a beautiful environment, something healing, something high vibrational, something that feels good to you and you feel aligned in the space. So I think not necessarily like even working with me, but just connecting, just doing a meditation in your space or in your home and trying to feel into that and what feels good to you. I think that's the step one for everybody, is just recognizing that your home is an extension of you. It's an exterior representation of you, and starting to form that relationship.
Okay. Thank you so much, Diana.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
I think that does it for today's Business Spotlight podcast. I appreciate Diana being with us today. I hope you learned a lot about interior design and everything the Divine Designer has to offer. I know I did. If you'd like more information, you can see Diana's work on Instagram at The Divine Designer, or you can email her at diana@thedivinedesigner.com. Again, thank you for listening to our Business Spotlight podcast. If you'd like to be on our podcast, go to our website, studiobventura.com, or call us at 805-312-9523. You can also visit our Instagram and Facebook pages. I'm your host, Patricia Lynch. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next Business Spotlight podcast.